everyone, and welcome to another episode of Quick Chapter. This quick chapter is on Chapter 6. What are the experiences and effects of living in a diverse society? But as usual, hold up, this quick chapter is just meant for your quick revision. It's not meant to replace your teacher's lessons or your teacher's notes, so you still need to refer to your original learning materials and please pay attention in class. Okay, so in chapter 6, we are essentially going to learn about the good parts and the bad parts of living in a diverse society. Because in a diverse society, from the word diverse in itself, it means that we are surrounded by people with different backgrounds. As people have different beliefs, values, practices, and views, relationships among people can become more complex. Now, sometimes we can negotiate differences successfully, but there are times where we face challenges and this leads to tensions and even conflicts may ensue. Interactions often happen in a common space. Now, what is a common space? A common space is a physical location and it can even be a social space where different groups of people interact and collaborate with each other. So when you meet people in a mutual space, you get to know each other, you form friendships, and through these friendships, as you really get to know the other person, this leads to mutual understanding. And when you bond and do activities together, you share experiences and memories, and this tighten the relationship you have with each other. But of course, in order for the common space to really be a jumping board or a springboard for interactions to happen, you must have an attitude of openness for interactions to happen. Because if you are very close minded, you will have a very cold personality, you're not willing to really open up and talk to people who are different from you, then a common space will still defeat its purpose. So an example for common space can be the void deck. So this is where you see bird watching, right? This really allows elderlies of different background and different races to really come together and bond over their love for bird watching. You have social media, so a lot of us are on social media. This allow us to talk to people from different background, just chatting with each other, DMing each other, bonding over love for maybe a certain music group. Maybe even in the comment section we talk to people. Online space is a common space. In the school field or in schools we hang out with our friends, that is a form of a common space as well. Now let's talk about the experiences and effects of living in a diverse society. The first factor is how living in a diverse society allows cultural exchange and appreciation. Because when people are really very different, this will ultimately lead to people sharing ideas, customs, and traditions among people from different backgrounds. Now, this helps to deepen understanding and appreciation of the uniqueness, commonalities, and differences among people. When you talk and really get to know each other, this enable people to build meaningful relationships with others from different backgrounds and to learn from their ideas, experiences, and cultures. So essentially, this really widens our horizon and we get to know a little bit more about the world. I think something that you guys might relate to is actually school exchange programs. If you're able to go overseas, there will be a form of a local school exchange where you will talk to some students from overseas countries to get to know more about the country that you're visiting and vice versa. Or similarly also, if you have foreign students coming to your school and there's a buddy system, you get to know more about different countries, different culture. That is a form of an exchange and appreciation as well. Cultural exchange and appreciation will help to deepen one's appreciation of other cultures, and it can also contribute to shaping the local cultural and arts landscape. So the textbook talks about Dr. Iskandar Jalil, who was inspired by his time studying in Japan. So he ended up integrating Japanese and Islamic style into his pottery as seen in the photos here. When you exchange and appreciate culture, this can also result in a fusion of cultures, and it can also lead to creation of new designs and products. So an example here that I think a lot of people will find familiar is, fusion food. When you go to certain cafes and you see the onde onde cake, but onde onde cake is traditionally onde onde in itself, which is a dessert of the Malay community. So there is a form of creation of new products. Sometimes when we listen to music also, if you're a fan of K-pop, sometimes you will hear elements of different cultures influencing how the music sounds like. Second is the exchange of knowledge and skills. When a society is diverse, it brings people with different backgrounds, qualifications, and experience to share their knowledge and skills. When you exchange your strength and you learn from one another, this leads to a creation of new products. A very good example is a Thermo Fisher Scientific. Okay, who exactly is Thermo Fisher Scientific? They are essentially one of the world's largest medical device makers with a research and development center in Singapore. Now, because they are MNC, they have employees from all around the world, some of them including Singaporeans, and this really value adds to Singapore because we can learn from experts from other countries, we can share ideas, and the people from our country who are working in this company really gets value added because they learn from people who have skills that they do not have. So this helps to sharpen our skills and make us better in terms of whatever ability that we have. So the outcome is how through this collaboration, this has actually allowed us to produce high quality equipment such as PPE and PCR test kits that we really used very actively during COVID-19. So this is one very good example of how when society is diverse and you're open-minded to really learn from one another, you actually get to learn different skills, and this value adds you as a person and as a community as well. But of course, there are downsides to being in a diverse society, and this can be in the form of stereotypes, prejudice, and discrimination. Because after all, in a diverse society, there are very different people all around, and sometimes you can make inaccurate and insensitive judgments and comments because these are often based on ignorance and wrong assumptions. This is because in order for us to really understand someone who are very different from us, it really takes a lot of effort, and sometimes unfortunately, people are not really that open-minded, open-hearted to take the step forward to understand someone who's different from us. And often as a result, these people make assumptions and judgments of people. Differences in cultural backgrounds can lead to conflicting views on values, beliefs, practices, and perspectives, and all of this can lead to negative sentiments, causing people to jump to conclusion about others. And when you have certain preconceived notion that you don't bother to really dispel and learn about other people, this can lead to misunderstandings and happiness. Stereotypes are generalized beliefs about a particular group of people. Prejudice is a form of attitude and feelings towards groups that are not based on reason or fact. And this can be taken in the form of xenophobia, directed against people of a specific nationality or from a particular group. Unfortunately, some people, they have stereotypes, right? And then this kind of influences how they view certain groups of people. So this becomes a prejudice. And subconsciously, all of us have stereotypes and prejudices about certain groups of people. But unfortunately, some people will decide to consciously act on their stereotypes and prejudice. And this is what we call discrimination. When a person acts on his or her prejudice beliefs and negative feelings against a specific group by hurting or excluding that group. So this is where we need to also consider that racism is also a form of discrimination because you are essentially being prejudiced and discriminating people just because of their own race or ethnic group. Now the textbook features some examples. So for example, during COVID-19, there's this case study, right? I think some of you guys might even see this video of a nurse who was actually very good friends with his neighbors, but unfortunately, when they learned during the COVID pandemic that the nurse and his wife were frontline workers, they decided to discriminate them and were very, very mean towards them. Some of you guys might have seen this video that was going viral about this racist man who was essentially verbally abusing a mixed race couple. The Chinese man was later fired from his job as a polytechnic lecturer and was charged in court for his actions. So these two incidences were pretty viral, and I think a lot of people would have seen videos of these two incidents. Now, episodes of prejudice and discrimination, both through words and actions, can cause hurt and unnecessary suffering. So I really hope that everyone is open-minded, sensitive towards the feelings of others, respect, and have mutual understanding among the various groups of peoples in society. If you see someone who's really very different from you in terms of ethnicity, beliefs, or maybe just their behavior or personality in itself, I hope that you guys will take the time to really take a pause, take a step forward, and get to know the person as an individual in itself and see beyond the differences. Because I think at the end of the day, you realize that no matter how different we are from a person, there will always be a form of similarity that you have with him or her. The last factor is competition for resources. Now, we know that there's a lot of foreign workers working in Singapore, and this is because Singapore is a very short country, so we face shortage of manpower. And in order to really get around that issue, we need to have foreign workers because we have low fertility rate, we have aging population. The foreign workforce consists of different groups of people. So a lot of people always think that, oh, it's just foreign workers, blue-collar workers. But as you see on the screen, we have different kind of employment passes in Singapore. Our workforce consists of highly skilled, high-age earners, and lesser skilled and low-wage workers. So our pool of foreign workers in Singapore is actually very diverse in itself. But of course, Singaporeans are starting to be concerned, right? Because if we have a lot of foreigners, and there's very limited resources in Singapore, especially because there's no such thing as an unlimited supply of resources, and Singapore is also a very small country. So some Singaporeans are being very concerned about this. So they start to wonder, are these people taking away my job opportunities? Um, if we are employing highly skilled foreign workers, right? Maybe highly skilled researchers in a scientific field, does this mean that if I am someone from a science background, I have lesser job opportunities? There are some fears of that as well. There are some people essentially complaining and saying that Singapore is such a small country, our MRT is always breaking down, it's so cramped, housing is expensive, the new houses are getting smaller, and Singaporeans by ourselves, we are already struggling. So if we have more foreign workers in a very small country like Singapore, does this mean that we have to fight for housing, for space in transportation? So a lot of people are getting very concerned about that, right? And when they're concerned about that, people are starting to be very vocal about it. So this leads to tensions and people start to be very anxious about it. Some people might even outwardly show their unhappiness towards the foreign workers, which essentially causes tensions in the social fabric of Singapore as well. So the Singapore government has tried to address concerns about foreigners over job security, but of course these concerns or the methods in which the government try to address this concern is not 100% success rate where everyone is happy. I think it's a constant work in progress depending on the ever-changing needs that the country has. So for example, the government actually imposed a stricter workforce control. They tightened criteria for employment passes. They raised minimum qualifying salary for S pass. So for example, a foreigner needs to earn a higher minimum salary before they can get a pass. We have the fair consideration framework, so employers must give fair consideration to Singaporeans based on merit, and anyone who has unfair hiring practices that favor foreigners will be dealt with. So I think the idea is to ensure that if, let's say, an employer is getting in a foreign worker, it must be because of merit. It must be because this foreigner has a specific skill that maybe after intense searching, Singaporeans don't have. So it must be a case of this guy can really value add to the company and to Singapore rather than, oh, I'm employing a foreign worker because he's much more cheaper than employing a Singaporean. So these are some ways in which the government addresses concerns, right? So employers also cannot kind of go through the back door and just illegally or quietly employ foreigners. There are certain processes in which the employers need to advertise job vacancies on official platforms like my careers future, so that Singaporeans and PRs can find jobs on official platforms. So this is all about being transparent. There's a job available in my country. I'm opening to Singaporeans and PRs. If let's say I am being very open and transparent about my job, I'm trying to interview people and I still cannot find, then it is pretty safe for the employee to say, okay, there's no one who wants to take up my job. This is why I am bringing a foreign worker. So this is the end of chapter 6. I hope this has been helpful. Bye bye.